Good evening, Claudia, and welcome to Design Dialogues hosted by Fublis. This is your host, Bhavya, and today we have the pleasure of speaking with Claudia, the partner at TARI Architects in Rome. Just to give a brief introduction to your studio, TARI Architects, based in Rome, led by Claudia and Marco since 2017, is known for its innovative approach towards architecture spanning urban planning to temporary installations. Their work thoughtfully addresses contemporary social needs and challenges. The firm has earned prestigious national and international awards, including the top prizes in Italy and recognition in the Europe's top 40 architects under 40. Tari also engages in speculative research and academic contributions at University of Rome. So thank you so much for joining us today, Claudia.
Thank you for having invited us. Thank you very much.
So before starting the questions, I would like to inform you that this interview will be published on the website of Fublis. So sign up to the Fublis website and you'll get the access to watch this interview. So shall we proceed with the questions?
Yeah, please.
So first question for the day. TARI Architects emphasizes contextual sensitivity and cultural relevance in their projects. How do you navigate the balance between responding to local traditions and pushing the boundaries of contemporary design and architecture?
Well, in our opinion, the very first need we need to focus on are the needs of the context and the needs that we always try to find within the brief. We mostly take part to public, national, international competitions. So usually we have a brief, a design brief to watch on. So it is a sort of reference we need to face and we need to understand, but also the analysis, the critical analysis of the context itself is very important in this sense. For our approach is undoubtedly one of the most significant part of the general strategy we need to challenge, we need to design about, and also we always try to not just to focus on the aesthetic or the aesthetical output of the design, but also we always try to find a sort of relationship space, so a collective dimension of the project that can balance in a way the need of something that is recognizable in a way, but also at the same time something that is useful and meets the need of the context and the citizens themselves.
Perfect. So, Claudia, talking about schools, schools are more than just the buildings, they shape learning experiences, as they say. So, how did the design of the Fabine School addresses both functionality and the emotional well being to create an environment that fosters curiosity and creativity among students?
Well, the example of a Faibene school that is placed in Rimini, that is a town in the center of Italy, and it's very also close to the sea as well. The main aspect of the school is undoubtedly its location, because it's located in a place that is not in the city center, but a little bit outside, near a place that is not very much built already. So we have the landscape and nature as our main topics to focus on. So the relationship between the built environment and the natural one was one of the key aspects of the design process itself. And we conceive the school in particular as a sort of connection between these two words. So on one side, the built necessity of building a new building, so of building a new school. On the other side, our idea to respect in a way the natural landscape and try to have a relationship with it. In fact, the school is conceived as a sort of buffer, a sort of something that is in between the two sides, and that always try to preserve the connection, also spatial and visual, within the outdoor space. For example, every room, every classroom, each classroom is near the outdoor space, and kids can actually go outside and stay within the garden that they have. So the relationship with the landscape was one of the key aspects of that project in particular.
So, talking about the same project, school buildings must withstand both time and changing education philosophies. So, what key design principles guided the creation of this project to ensure it stays relevant, functional, and inspiring for the generations to come?
Well, I think referring to the Faibane school, that flexibility was one of the key aspects we focus for the design of the school itself. We think that the school in general is a place that also with its space can teach something. So it's a sort of an active learning space itself. So we conceived the classroom, for example, as very flexible in order to be able to always welcome different kind of functions and activities within the day or within the months or within the years. And the corridor itself, that usually is something that is conceived just as a connection among different functions, was instead conceived as a sort of space, a learning space itself. Also, the corridor that is not the minimum, its length and its thickness is not the minimum required, but we try to emphasize its importance in order to emphasize its role within the learning system. Is characterized by two main outdoor areas that are the two courtyards. So we have this corridor that not just led the kids through the classrooms or laboratories, but also led the kids to socialize, to meet, to stay together, to study together. We have these wide areas where kids can actually stay together and study together. And the corridor also link two main inner courtyard that complete the outdoor system that we have also with the garden outside.
So, Claudia, as we have looked over your portfolio and overall, your designs, they often seem to tell a different story, where spaces that unfolds like a journey. So, how do you craft spatial narratives that enhance the way people experience and interact with architecture?
Well, one of the main topics, or maybe something that we consciously or unconsciously always find in the design process is the attention to the collective dimension of the building itself, in a sense that even referring to the idea theorized by Bernard Schumi of the event that actually is very important for the city and for the space itself, we always try to find a sort of collective dimension within the building itself, because we strongly believe that the openness of the building, so its attitude to be open, to be also inhabited and visited and crossed by, is the main key to also propose a building or a system that is really integrated within the urban context or urban fabric itself. A space that is, besides its main function, that obviously comes from the requirement at the very beginning of the design process, we always try to find new additional functions that are devoted to citizens, visitors, and the relationship in general that can be enhanced through those spaces.
So, model schools, they often integrate nature into their design to support the mental well being and the focus of the students. So, how does your project, Filippo Werner School, incorporate natural elements such as the light, air, or the greenery to create a more stimulating and nurturing learning environment for the students?
Of course, it is obviously a main feature and a main key of the project. As I was saying about Five Bene School in Rimini just a few minutes ago, nature was one of the key aspects of the project itself, and this project was conceived as a sort of link between the built and unbuilt landscape. For Filippo Verna School is a very similar situation. In reality, the contexts were very different, because if Rimini was placed, if Fai Bene School in Rimini was placed in a place that was very natural and not so built. In the case of Verna School, it was placed within the city center. It is a small village in Italy, just a few thousands of people, but at the same time, it was in the middle, in the city center of the village itself. But the village was also characterized by a huge context, a very enchanting context characterized by huge mountains, Majella Mountains, that were something that we need to face somehow, that we need to approach in a way. So we try to insert the school within the context in a way to proposed something that we called an anti-landmark. So a place, a building that will be recognized somehow, but at the same time not as a landmark, but as something well placed and well inserted in the urban fabric and the natural context. For example, the city in particular was characterized also in an old drawing by Escher, was characterized by a lot of rooftops within this mountain, these huge mountains that is placed there. So we try to play with the idea and the shape of the rooftop in order to insert the new school within the context, but also proposing something that will be recognized as a new building, as a new school, but well placed within the context itself.
So, Claudia, educational spaces, they must evolve with changing teaching methods and the technologies that students need. So, how does the architecture of the Filipino Verno School ensure the flexibility for future needs while maintaining a very strong architecture identity?
Well, in the case of Filippo Verna School, I think that it was not the most flexible project of school that we designed because the plot area was very tight. So we need to face the dimension of the plot area. It was a constraint, obviously. And so we tried to put and to design something that was very, very simple, that was flexible, but that need to face with the context itself and the plot area itself. But I think that in this case, the idea of flexibility is not just related to the flexibility, for example, of the classrooms, but the flexibility of the function itself of the school, in the sense that that school was conceived not just as school where to study and to learn, obviously, but also as a city center. So it was conceived as a public building that after the traditional and normal school hours and school days can be used by the citizens, not just the students, but the citizens themselves as a place where to meet and socialize. So flexibility in this case is more functional in a way that physical. And obviously a lot of rooms, a lot of classrooms were conceived in order to be, for example, combined with one in order to promote different kind of events, the possibility to host different kind of events. As for the rooftop itself, the rooftop was conceived to cover a sort of terrace, so an outdoor space, as for the garden at the ground zero, but an elevated terrace where people were students during the student hours, but also citizens, for example, during the weekends or afternoon, can meet and socialize or have different kind of events or meetings. So it was like a sort of functional flexibility in this sense.
Sustainability, as you know, it's one of the core architectural discussions that we are having among architects today. So, how does TARI Architects approach sustainability in a way that is very deeply integrated into their design philosophy rather than just following the simply industrial trends that is going on?
Well, we believe that sustainability is something that we need to approach since the very first step of the project, in the sense that in order to guarantee the fact that it will be not just something added at the end, we always try to start from the analysis of the context in order to position temperatures and so on, in order to design a project that, since the very first step of the design process, also preferring passive strategies, for example, will be well integrated in the context itself. Taking consideration that about the schools, for example, we are talking about NZEB schools, NZEB buildings, so buildings that are nearly zero energy as requirement for their functioning. So they have a lot of features, for example, and a lot of sustainable strategies in order to reach this kind of functional and functioning and characteristics. So not just photovoltaic panels for sure, but also the orientation of the classrooms themselves. In the case of Rimini that we spoke just a few minutes ago, for example, all the classrooms are orientated to the south in order to guarantee in the very first hours of the morning the correct natural light to the students. And for example, the laboratories were not placed there because they do not need such characteristics, so they were placed in the northern part of the school itself. So it is a sort of approach that we try to focus on and we try to have since the very first step of the design process itself.
TARI Architects, they have a very recognized reputation among creating a lot of projects. So we must come along with that every project comes with unique challenges, whether it's related to site conditions, budget constraint, or the user needs. So what were the biggest challenges that you had faced while designing Leopoldo Pilla School, and how did your team overcome those challenges through innovative design solutions?
Well, I think that every project has a challenge in a sense that is always a sort of moment of trying to solve a main challenge that is something that is clear or unclear since the very first step. In the case of Leopoldo Pilla School, that is one of the biggest schools we are involved in, and it's under construction in this moment. I think it was its position within the city itself, in a sense that Venafro is a city that is characterized by this main street, this main road that is called Via Maiella, and Via Maiella is the entrance to the city, and Leopoldo Pilla, the plot where the new school is going to be placed, is situated at the entrance of the city itself. So the new school will become the first thing you are going to see of the city of Venafro, or the last one if you're going or moving. So it was for us a sort of a challenge in a way, in a sense that we need to think about a school that was obviously not just a school, but a sort of entrance building to the city. This is why we decided to not provide just the building itself, but also a huge square in front of the building, in front of the school. So thanks to this square, it is going to become hopefully a sort of collective and public epicenter at the entrance of the city of Venafro. So we try to change and to switch a challenge that was sort of something that we need to face at the beginning, into a sort of a strength point for the project itself.
A school is often a reflection of its surrounding community. So, how did the local context influence the design of the Leopoldi Pilla School, and how does the building contribute to the broader social and the cultural fabric?
Well, I think that one of the main aspects of the school was that of the square in front of the school itself, in a sense that it is a learning space, as we're talking about, but is also a place that can be used by the citizens themselves. This square is going to become hopefully a sort of collective public space where it's conceived to host different kinds of activities, from market projections to outdoor and outside events during the winter or summertime. Is going to become hopefully a really public epicenter. So it was one of the main characteristics of the school itself. And the school is conceived as for Berna School, a sort of city center, a city epicenter, because besides the learning hours and the school days, it's going to be used also during the afternoons and the weekends, for example. Also, the school is going to be provided with an outdoor basketball field that has its own entrance, and it can be used also both by students, but also by outside visitors that would like to enjoy the spaces. Leopoldo Pilla School is characterized by also a huge main facade that is a little tilted, that is going to face the mountain in front of the school itself, but it's also conceived as a sort of blank canvas that every citizen can imagine to draw on somehow. And it's also iconic in this sense because it's something that is 13 meters high and 100 meters long, so it will be sort of symbol of the city, but at the same time something that I hope that citizens will love to imagine and to with.
So, Claudia, moving to the last question for the day. So, we as an architect in an architecture community, we have the ability and we have the power to influence how people interact with the world around them. So, looking ahead, what is the one bold idea or change that you hope to see in the field of architecture? And how does your studio, TARI Architects, is contributing to that vision?
As I was mentioning before, I think that the public and collective dimension and space is something that consciously or unconsciously always focus on. It's one of the main aspects we always try to identify in our project, private and public one at all scales, because we strongly believe that the openness of the building itself in this sense is the key to provide a building not just for its function, but as a place that people can really inhabit and to live in. At the same time, I think it's very, I don't know, maybe interesting the fact that as a PhD researcher, I focused for my PhD thesis on a topic that was the complete opposite, because I focused and I studied a research about space without human beings inside. So if with the studio, we are going to focus on the public dimension and the collective dimension of the building, focusing on the human being as the key element of the space itself. As a researcher, we always try to focus on the opposite, on buildings that do not provide human beings in the inside. I'm thinking about warehouses, logistics, buildings, and so on that are devoted to machines and to logistic requirements, but not to human beings. But even there, we always try also with our speculative researches to find a public space there. So a dimension that even in a no-human space can be lived and inhabited by human beings.
Claudia, that was the last question for the day. Thank you so much for giving your precious time. It was a pleasure to have you here. And don't forget to sign up with the Fublis website. Thank you so much, Claudia.